Hello freaks, geeks, degenerates and basement dwellers, welcome to the war zone. I'm Scruffy and this is Skruffytalez. So in this video we're gonna focus on three sections essentially. First, a quick look at Kupiansk, not much happening there, but just a quick look. And then we're gonna take a look at the elite forces that are currently pushing into Pokrovsk for Ukraine. And what Ukraine did with that air assault, what the objective was, and how it all played out. And once we've taken a look at Pokrovsk, we're going to take a look at, do some armchair general stuff, and take a look at Rodynske and just how vital Rodynske is in the grand scheme of things, how Rodynske will help Ukraine inflict tremendous amounts of casualties on the Russians within Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad. So yeah, let's get the show on the road. So a quick stop at Kupiansk before we're heading down to Pokrovsk. No further updates up here, but apparently there is annoyance among Russians online. Russian mill bloggers are questioning how this is happening. How the hell is Ukraine pushing through? And apparently they are annoyed that seemingly a lot of Ukrainians has managed to slip through Russian lines, indicating that maybe the flanks weren't as secured as they should have been in order to facilitate the push into Kupiansk. Doing something like this, obviously you need to have a strong flank to deny the enemy a chance to make a push like this, since the pocket going south is so narrow, right? It kind of invites a pincer move, an attack in the rear that cuts you off, right? So Russian mill bloggers appears to be really annoyed about this fact. Also, a word on Kupiansk. Zelensky has now, in two statements, repeated that there's only 60 Russians within Kupiansk. It sounds fairly low, doesn't it? That figure, that number. But if that's the case, then it's 60 Russians sneaking around deep reconnaissance units that are calling in drone strikes and artillery strikes whenever they spot Ukrainian positions. So the Ukrainians they do appear fairly certain that they will have sorted out Kupiansk soon enough. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm not convinced it's gonna be a fast steamrolling operation into Kupiansk. This is probably gonna take time, and the Ukrainians really need to reach Hulebivka to stand a chance of mopping up the situation in Kupiansk. But hopefully in a couple of days they will be able to reach Hulebivka and begin mop-up operations here in Kupiansk. But yeah, that's going to have to be it for that. Now we're going to jump down back to Pokrovsk once again. Pokrovsk, there's been some updates on various maps, so I've tried to adjust my maps as well. Starting off southern part of Myrnohrad, we have indication of a lot of Russian activity in this part of town, west of this slag heap, and in this factory area here, southeast of the slag heap. So it does appear as if Russia has launched a rather large, strong push into the area of the slag heap here. Unsure if Kosatske is under Russian control or if it's contested or what have you. So it's a bit of a question mark out here. But it does appear as if Russia has managed to push through and are operating in and around this slag heap, gaining a foothold in the southern end of Myrnohrad. Not much else going on in the north as far as Myrnohrad is concerned. So we're moving back over to Pokrovsk, where we're seeing some updates. Russia is more than likely in control of Nativka. They've pushed up here along the edges of the high-rise belt and taken some apartment buildings up here. They seem to be in control of this part of town here, while they are slowly saturating this part this is probably, this is leaning towards being under Russian control in the next couple of days. If they can keep saturating this part and then move in platoon-sized element to link up with each pocket of deep reconnaissance groups that are hiding here, then they can take street by street just by slowly building up a presence with the saturation tactics. Same thing over here. The thing that is slowing them down is the railroad going straight through town that is separating southern and northern Pokrovsk. It's difficult to cross without being spotted. So the Russians are slowly expanding over here, but not in the same manner we're seeing down here, where they are constantly pushing towards reaching the critical mass with the saturation tactics. So what the Ukrainian official numbers is that there's somewhere between 300 to 1,000 Russians sneaking around within Pokrovsk. So as you can imagine, trying to find them and clear them out will take time and effort, and that is why we saw the air assault taking place up here, and we're gonna return to it to explore what the hell is going on and what took place. So we have here 2 roads leading into Pokrovsk that are vital for the Ukrainians and pushing in logistics and moving wounded in and out, or moving wounded out and moving troops in. As you can see, you can move through cover all the way into town essentially, and then finding cover in the buildings from the drones. So what happened? Let's see here if we can make this happen so you can understand the situation here. This building right here is what was the main objective for the air assault. This building, and the Russians had managed to occupy this building, and as you can imagine, if you control this building, then you are in a very good position to control the roads here leading in and out of Pokrovsk, especially if you hide in the wooded areas and up on the rooftops and what have you. Then you completely control these 2 access ways. And this was a major concern for the Ukrainians. This was an issue. So what the Ukrainians did, I mean, because if you do sneak past the Russian drone screen that are hunting Ukrainians behind Pokrovsk, and you do manage to sneak past all of them, and then you try and come down here, you're going to get ambushed by these guys opening fire at you, or they can call in drones and artillery if you're trying to mount a frontal assault and stuff like that. So this was essentially a fortification, a fortress that completely shut down these 2 roads that the Ukrainians rely on to enter the town. You also have a road over here that you likewise control from this area. So Ukraine had to do something to deal with this fortified position. So what they did was the air assault with the Black Hawks that flew in a couple of days before Halloween, not on Halloween, not on November 1st, well in advance last week, several days before Halloween. So all the Russian propaganda that everything was shut down is just bullshit, because I made other videos about it, just explaining in detail how that is bullshit. Anyway, so the Ukrainians needed to somehow deal with this fortified position. So with Black Hawks, they flew past the drone screen, so the Russians did not have a chance to react to this fast moving unit that was pushing in to let's use that one, to drop off troops, and they dropped them off right here. And from there they then, let's use this one, disembarked and, god damn it, wrong one, let's see here, this one. And from here they then moved straight in to assault the main objective. So flying in with helicopters allowed the Ukrainians to quickly overcome and bypass the drone screen. The Russians had no chance to react and engage the helicopter or the guys on the ground. Likewise, the Russians in the building did not have time to mount a ambush,
since the choppers came in at such a speed, and more than likely during the early hours of the morning, maybe even at night, when the Russians weren't as active as you might expect them to be during the day. Ukraine disembarks and then mounts the assault and takes the objective. In so doing, they have now opened up these two pathways, and the Ukrainians, after taking the objective, move in on foot more elite operators from different other branches of the special forces, link up with the air assault unit, and they now have a presence in Pokrovsk. They have a forward base of operations, a staging point, and from here they can now spread out into the rest of the town, which they more than likely have been doing for over a week at this point. And we're now today seeing reports from Ukraine that these units are operating within Pokrovsk, clearing out buildings of Russians. So let's remove all of this. So where are we at? We are currently in the position with Ukraine securing this part of town, and my suspicion is that they are currently conducting operations here, if they haven't already secured this part of town, and they're now pushing in to the parts of Pokrovsk north of the railroad to clear out these buildings and this area, to allow Ukraine to utilize these roads to bring in logistics and manpower and what have you as well. So Russia still has the upper hand south of the railroad. I don't think anyone can deny that. Ukraine does stand a chance in clearing out the northern parts of these deep reconnaissance units. Numbers vary from 300 to 1,000 that are sneaking around within Pokrovsk. So that was the air assault operation, a very successful air assault that took the Russians by surprise. They had no idea what was going on, and it wasn't until Reuters broke the news that this has happened that the Russians began the propaganda machine and trying to convince the Vatniks that this was a complete failure, that they killed everyone, that the choppers were destroyed, and what have you. By the time all of that propaganda bullshit began on the 1st of November, the Ukrainians had already been operating here for several days. So it's just bullshit that the Russians intercepted the air assault and put a stop to it. Ukraine has secured this small corner. This is a staging point. They can now bring in troops and what have you. There's obviously going to be a lot of drones operating here now after the news broke that the Ukrainians launched this successful air assault. So the Russians are going to have lots of drones here trying to hunt them down. But the reporting is that Ukraine has pushed in additional special forces into the area, more than likely trying to clear out this part of the battlefield first, with intentions to, moving further into Pokrovsk, to clearing out the areas where you have these Russian units, deep reconnaissance units operating. So what the Ukrainians initially want to do is free up the logistics coming in this way, and also the logistics that can come into town from here. And from this part of town, you can see here how the Russians have moved up to sever the Ukrainian options coming in from the north. So you want to open up the logistical routes coming in this way, and also giving Ukraine options and coming in from this northern corner as well. So we can expect the Ukrainians to establish a presence here at first, and then moving eastward, clearing out this part of town to begin with, would be my guess. Seems logical. So that's Pokrovsk, I think, at the moment. Yeah, I think that's it. Now we're gonna do some armchair general stuff. Might be fun. So It's really quite incredible. This tiny area here is where you have Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad, Shakove, and what have you, and where you had the Bunny Ears operation and everything. And this tiny area here, this is where we're currently seeing 30% of all Russian assaults. 30%, a third of every Russian offensive action is taking place down here. Right? And this tiny portion of the front line is in 2025, where Russia's lost a third of all of their casualties. 100,000 troops, if not more, at this point. A third of all of their casualties and a third of all their offensive action is happening here in this tiny, tiny battle space. Isn't that amazing? It's just insanity. So Russia is doubling down 10 times over in taking Pokrovsk. And this, of course, provides a huge opportunity for the Ukrainians in grinding down the Russians, because if they hold Pokrovsk, it's going to deplete all of the front lines. Russia is already moving troops from Kherson, from Sumy further north up here, moving troops from Kupiansk, which is why Ukraine is now being able to counterattack in Kupiansk. And they're moving troops from Konstantinivka as well. Everything is going to Pokrovsk. And if Ukraine can hold for a few months more, then we're going to see troops coming in from Siversk and Lyman as well. I guarantee it. This is a pit of doom for the Russians, where Russian soldiers just go to die, essentially, where they're just wasting resources in this tiny, tiny battle space. And the Ukrainians knows it, and they know that if they can hold, they can grind down the Russians and break the Russian army. Like I've been saying for ever now, for, is it 10, 12 months, right? So what does Ukraine have, what do they have to do to make sure this becomes reality? Well, Pokrovsk is important, but not the most important battle in the operational area. Even though it is in Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad where they can grind down the Russians, in order to make that a reality, they must control Rodynske. If they can secure Rodynske, they open up logistics moving into Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk. If you take a look, I mean, they can come down this way much more safely. They can come down this way much more safely, and even going through here into Myrnohrad, it just becomes all the more safer for all Ukrainian logistics reaching these two cities, despite the Russian drone screen that has been set up to hunt down Ukrainian logistics. You can come through Ryzhne and move in from the north into Pokrovsk as well. So this is the most important battlefield at the moment, in order for Ukraine to maintaining a hold on these two cities and be able to grind down the Russians. And it just so happens that the Ukrainians has a good opportunity in securing Rodynske. Ukraine has been launching a bunch of counterattacks in the past 2 months. They've been attacking towards Boykivka. They've been attacking up here around the Shakove pocket. Most recently, they launched the attack up at Kupiansk. They really only need one such good push in this area, and that is right here. I've been talking about this before. Coming down from the Satyshok-Fedorivka area straight down towards these two dams. As you can see, Russia don't have all that many options in moving through here in reaching Rodynske. So if Ukraine can come down here with one solid push, these Russians are essentially isolated. Here you have open fields, hunting grounds for drones, same thing here. Coming down to the dams would isolate these Russians, and then you can start grinding them down and pushing them away from Rodynske and opening up these logistical lines into Myrnohrad and into Pokrovsk. Just one solid push. I've been seeing comments in the Discord groups and in my comment sections that Ukraine is making a move for Rodynske. I haven't seen it on any maps. Not sure if it's a thing. But that might be a stepping stone into achieving what we're talking about, coming down here and from Rodynske coming in towards the lakes from behind, as it were. So we're going to have to keep an eye on the situation in Rodynske if there's any truth to those claims. But if Ukraine can make a push here and cut off the Russians around these lakes, then they can secure Rodynske, and then they can push in logistics into Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk, and then the situation changes dramatically, because then they can resupply, they can reinforce, and then the Russians are in for one hell of a fight in the twin cities of Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad, like we predicted, 10 to 12 months ago. So I think that even if Pokrovsk and Myrnohrad is where the brunt of the killing will take place, at the moment, Rodynske is the most important battlefield. This is the battle that Ukraine needs to win in order to make things happen down here, to ensure that Ukraine can break the Russians here in Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk. So, yes, we had a important air assault that was successful, that will allow Ukraine to push in elite forces to open up this corner of Pokrovsk. Now we need something similar on a larger scale, more than likely, happening up here in order to cut off the Russians here at the dams and allow Ukraine to secure Rodynske and this area here, and opening up these vital logistical lines into Myrnohrad and Pokrovsk.
Yeah, that's it. I hope you found it interesting. I hope I'll see you in the next one. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.